and welcome to this occasion. To me, is an occasion. I'm glad to see you all here. Um, I want to, like I said, the topic or title of my research is really world media systems, a comparative study of the occupational attitudes of Nigerian and journalists in the United States of America. I became interested in this topic because there's a lot of identity between Nigeria and the United States. We have a lot in common. And if you remember that as far back as 1956, in the Four Theories of the Press, Sebat et al. Told us that the media systems do, of necessity, reflect the political and social system where they're located. So you have a libertarian system in a democratic society, you have authoritarian in a dictatorial society, you have communist system in a communist society, and all that. So we should begin to expect that, therefore, that since Nigeria has a lot in common with the United States of America, it's also possible that we're going to have the same media system. I don't know, but I think it should be. But I know that before this time, as far back as 1990, 1991, a scholar came from Nigeria, Professor Mike Egbon. He came here, but he worked in Howard University, I think in Washington. He did a work, I think it was on Humphrey. It was on Humphrey, this scholarship, and he worked on this comparative analysis as well. But the difference is that he used an institutional approach to the study of he did, comparing Nigeria and the United States. What I mean by institutional approach, he used systems characteristics. He looked at the laws allowing freedom of expression. He looked at the documents, the First Amendment Declaration, comparing with Nigeria's freedom of press law, and he looked at the ownership. He looks at media access and the rest of them. This I consider to be in line with the tradition we met. The tradition we met was set up in 1956, like I said, by Sebat et al. Although since that time now we've got many other media systems. We have development media system now, we have democratic participant media system, we have got citizens media system and all that. We have multiplied because we are having now varieties of media of political systems. So I am not going to repeat what he has done. For a while, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Bible. There was a point in the ministry of Jesus Christ when he called his disciples together. I think it's that book of John. He said, "Who do people say I am?" And say, "Oh, you are John the Baptist." They say, "Oh, you are Moses." They say, "You are Elijah." Fine. Who do you say I am? You. Who do you say I am? So you see, as far back as that time, identity is an issue. Identity matters. But for a long time, mass communication, scholars and professionals have allowed other people to define them. They have allowed other people to tell us who we are. They have allowed other people to set parameters and criteria by which we should be judged. I think that we should begin to reverse that order. That is the relevance of the study. Another relevance also is that, Nigeria, like I told you, has a lot of relationship with the United States. I can tell you that mass communication in Nigeria is an offshoot. It's an extension of mass communication in the USA. Why did I say so? Mass communication in Nigeria started in 1960, in the University of Nigeria, where I trained anyway. And it was founded by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe studied in Howard. He studied in Pennsylvania. And he came back to Nigeria. That was in the 1930s. He came back to Nigeria in 1936. But when he became the first president of Nigeria, he established University of Nigeria and established College of Journalism and called it Jackson College of Journalism. That's where I studied. And he, he affiliated that university, that college to University of Michigan. University of Michigan, and they assisted the university to come up and build a journalism curriculum. But beside that, of about 6 or 7 professors of journalism we have in Nigeria, but 4 of them, 75% of them, studied in the US. Even in my own department now in Nigeria, on the state, the professor there studied in Atlanta. Morehouse? You call it Morehouse in Atlanta. Studied there, and a few others. I know many of them trained at Madison, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, Madison. Many of them. So we define news therefore in terms of America. What America says news is what we say also news is in Nigeria. But above that, the occupational socialization, the socialization of journalists in Nigeria, is done mainly by American institutions. You have AP, AP is training some of them. Many of them are on scholarship or on workshop and seminars coming here, And of course, we use AP style sheet in our newsrooms. AP style sheet, that's what we use. So the content is that. So if that is the case, we are now asking, the way journalists think and the kind of mission they have defined for themselves in Nigeria, is it the same thing with what they have in the United States? Is it what United States journalists also declare for themselves? They see their roles in society as same, or are they different? If they're different, in which areas? So that is really the subject of my studies. And of course, it forms my research statement that my mission in this research is to find out the way, the habits of journalists in US and those in Nigeria and compare them. Now, in doing this, I will not be able, within this context of my research, to touch all aspects, all of their habits, and all of their characteristics. So I am simply looking at role perception. Role perception. How do they perceive their role? And from there, we now begin to see how that has influenced them in doing what they do. But how do we discover this? How are we going to discover what they think and of their role and their job? For the first time, they're going to speak for themselves. Others have spoken about them. Now they want to speak to them. No, others say, you are this, you are that, you are democratic, you are this, you are that. Now, who are you? They have been so much accused by your intellectuals, particularly Chomsky, what's the name again? The man in Stuart Hall, John Pigger, and all that. Journalists have been so accused of, in fact, they carry the sins of the world. What the politicians do and what the big businessmen do, journalists are getting the knock for it. Why did you not report? Why did you not expose? And all that. But we're not policemen, we're not soldiers, Yes, we only tell the story the way we know it. We don't manufacture stories, for God's sake, and we are not witches. So what you have as content, what you have as media content, is what society tells us. Although we have a responsibility to investigate, but you are investigating within the context of the same people that told you the story. So any media system is as good as the people that, if you have a society of liars, then the media must also be a liar. Yeah, if you have a society of truth tellers, then the media must be a truth teller. Because we depend on sources. We depend on people. So if all Nigerians, for example, are liars, they also have something to hide, then of course the media cannot do otherwise but to continue to reflect or echo what they're saying. But we have to investigate. But we have to investigate within what is humanly possible, the society. So it's an ideal. Truth telling is an ideal in journalism. And of course, the truth we tell in journalism is different. We have 2 types of truth there. You have scientific truth and moral truth. And I don't think that I think the problem we may have in journalism today is that people are mistaking scientific truth for moral truth. Moral truth and scientific truth are not the same thing. What is the difference? Moral truth is knowing the truth, knowing the situation, knowing the reality, but you deliberately decided to say something else. You know that it is A. But instead of you saying A, you say it's B. But scientific truth, and that kind of truth anyway, contrasts with dishonesty. It has to do with dishonesty. But when there are 3 people that died in an accident, and I am reporting 2, based on the information available to me, that's an error. It's not dishonesty. But, these 2 types of truths have been mixed up. That today, journalists are dismissed as liars. Oh, they are liars and they are this. I don't think it's true. So, now, Nigerian journalists are going to speak. Journalists in the United States of America are going to speak. Now, but the question I'm going to ask them is, who are you? What do you think about your role or mission in the society? What's your goal? What are your goals? So by the time I answer this question, then they will be able to tell me what to do and I will compare. So to get this done, I will define a questionnaire. I'm going to make a sample. I thought I should be able to, in fact I believe I should be able to get to at least 1,000 people across the nation. 1,000 in Nigeria and 1,000 journalists in US. Are randomly selected because I'm going to hold many other variables, constant. I'm not going to count the issue of race. I'm not going to count the issue of medium, whether you're in broadcasting or you're on television. No, I'm not going to look at that. I don't want to look at education, by the way, as long as, whether you have PhD or provided you have, the only condition I'm giving is that you are a practitioner. So once you are a practitioner, then of course, I'm beginning to think that you have a mission. And the mission you have, how do you discharge? What is that mission? I want to discover that mission. But how will I discover the mission? Like I told you, I'm going to design a questionnaire that will be based on self-reporting. It is attitude measurement based on self-reporting. Self-reporting is, what do you think about this? How do you do this? So from what they do and what they think, I'll be able to, aggregate their responses, under some categories to enable me make the comparison I want to make. For now, I have about 12 questions which I want to put to them, and it's a model which I copied from Weaver. I adopted it from Weaver and Willard, 1992. Weaver and Willard, actually studied they studied American as journalists. They surveyed them using very many variables, and from that work, he inspired some other works across the world, and he published that in a book called the Global Journalist. And that book is made up of surveys of journalists in 21 countries, in their attitudes, their ethics, and their education, races, tribal backgrounds, and gender, and all that. But we're not going to do all that. We're going to be limited by funds to be able to do that. But I believe that, for the past 2 weeks, I've been trying to see how to get a database of journalists in the United States. I have not succeeded. I've written and they are saying I should pay for them to give me their email addresses to be able to email my list to them. But at the end of the day, I might fall back on a survey that was done in 1992. And because I believe that between 1992 and now, we don't have new Americans, and we don't have new revolution or changes in the social or political system that would occasion a change of attitude and perception. So we're going to use that, but I'm not going to use all the questions which they use. I'm going to review those questions to know the ones that do not actually measure the overall perceptions. I will remove them and all that. Remember that this gentlemen I mentioned now are not really, some of them, are not really in the media. They're from sociology, from political science and all that. Although I know that Weaver is in Indiana, is in mass communication. So what I intend to do therefore is that I've designed this questionnaire, which I intend to give out to them and ask them to fill. I've made it as simple as possible by asking them to say yes or no. This questionnaire is based on attitude measurement. Attitude measurement. For example, it can ask you, I ask you to tick or check any of these statements that best describes you. Tick or check any of these statements that best describes you. My job as a journalist is to get out the news quickly. Does that apply to you or not? So you check. Then question 2, I can ask you, my responsibility is to investigate government claims and government statements. Whatever statement they make, I claim. So does that apply to you or no? And on and on and on and on. By the time I get these 12 questions, by the time you respond to them, I'll be able to draw a profile of you, the respondent, to know where you belong. Now, I have a theoretical support. My theoretical support is taken from Stuart Hall. Stuart Hall's theory of media. He calls it media representation. Media representation. Media representation. Stuart Hall is a professor at Open University in England, in London, and he has written so much. Although a linguist, but he has done so much to influence, begin to influence theories and research now in mass communication. Since the whole essence of media is representation, this representation is either real or unreal, either true or false, whatever it is, but it is representation because we present what we see to those who need to see them. So now in his own theory of representation, he identified 2 types of representation, very close to what I told you before about moral truth and scientific truth. He identified 2 modes of representation. One is representation by reflection and representation by construction. Representation by reflection and representation by construction. Representation by construction has to do with meanings, fixing meanings for the day-to-day experiences we have. And journalists are engaged in that. They engage in fixing meanings. And that is the major area of criticism against the media today. And some people believe actually that the job of the media is to re-engineer the society, is to recreate, to find a new moral order, to change people's perception, to persuade people, to mobilize them. But there's another group of people. These are the reflection school. Reflection is the imaging something as it is, without distortion or without any attempt to change it or interpret it. So it means presentation of facts the way they are, or the way you know them. That's scientific. Because under that condition, it's either you are wrong, it's either you are accurate or you're inaccurate. We cannot say you are right or wrong. But by opinion, you can be right or wrong. Just like mathematics. Although at times you say, oh, your math is wrong. No, you're accurate or inaccurate. That has nothing to do with me. But by the time you say you are right or wrong, or or going to the extent of describing my decisions as dishonest, then it becomes a moral issue. So I want to look at it this way. Some journalists believe that their role is informational. It's just to give information and allow the audience to make meanings on their own. But there are those who say, no, we must make meanings, we must interpret. So what I've done now is to list the characteristics of such people on one side. Then list the characteristics of those who reflect, who want to just pass information the way it is. And such information are subject to verification. But opinion is not subject to verification. It's merely ideological. Yeah. It's either I accept what you're saying or I don't accept it. There's no way I can go and verify, but I can verify factual presentation. So some people, what I'm trying to say is that you have two groups of journalists as far as I'm concerned. There are those who are interested in reflecting on reality. The way they hold a mirror to the society and let the society see itself the way it is. But there are others who see journalism as a tool of re-engineering the society, reconstructing the society. So in terms of that, you see them, there's context now. Who has the right to fix meaning in society? For the other guys, who has the right to fix meaning? Is it journalists? Is it politicians? Or the churches? Who? So you see that that area is a perpetual area of crisis. That's why you have advocacy journalists. That's why you have citizen journalists. That's why you have, so many names they go by. Then you have these liberal-oriented journalists that are only interested in telling the truth the way they say it, not opinionize it. That is why in American creed, journalism creed, there must be a separation between opinion and fact. But today, we find it difficult to find out the difference between opinion and fact. In news, we mix them because we are interpreting. And once you engage yourself in interpretation, you are bound to step on toes. You are bound to disagree with people. You are bound to oppose. You are bound to, because meaning is not universal. So that's why I have decided, therefore, that for me to be able to aggregate the responses I'm going to get from my questionnaire, whatever I'm going to get, I'll try to group them under these these two camps. And to help me generate questions, real questions, I relied on this theory to find out who are the journalists that believe in reflecting and who are the ones that believe in constructing. So that is the job I have decided to do. So maybe I have to stop here so that you can make some input into the work. You can also ask me questions. The life of academic is dialogue. There's nobody that has all the answer. So I would like to get some comments and questions from you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, working backward, I wrote down a bunch of questions. Thank you very much. It was very interesting so far. But it's interesting, the growth of interpretation, the growth of commentary journalism. There's lots of names for it. What do you think? Do you attribute that to anything? For example, I was watching Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain had a hard time answering a question yesterday, and that's a piece of news. And so it's 5 minutes. The video lasts 5 minutes, and that's the news. Those are the facts. All you have to do to report it is put it up on your website for 5 minutes. But that's not all the news around it. The rest of it is the interpretation of it. What does it mean? What does this mean for him? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Can you talk a little bit about why you think we've gotten to a point where there's a lot of mix between those two?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. In Nigeria, we have what you call broadcast code. Broadcast code. And NBC has also come up with what they call political reporting guidelines. Because the issue you raise is within the ambit of political reporting. The example you gave. Right. It is forbidden in Nigeria to interpret political statements in order to maintain our professional distance from and we thought we borrowed this from America. But I've come to America now to know that American media is heavily interpreted. But we were, for example, before I came to this place, I always use America as an example of a country that separated opinion from facts. You report when you want to report and give opinion when you want to give opinion. Because the public trust on journalism, there's public trust on journalism. And you know that there are different types of communication in the media. Different communication channels or modes, communication forms. You have public relations, you have advertising, you have journalism, itself. Now, journalism has a lot of respect and public trust because of the public belief that it is interested exercise. It's a detached exercise. Journalists don't have no particular interest in what they are reporting. They are not affected. They don't want to be involved in what they are reporting. They don't look at themselves as newsmakers. So they write the news from a scientific distance in order to maintain objectivity, accuracy, neutrality, and balance. Now, I think that all over the world, this is the creed of journalism. Objectivity, balance. Now, when you are involved in what you are writing, and you are writing passionately about it, are you going to be balanced? Are you going to be objective? Are you going to be neutral? Already you have declared your stand. So once you have declared your stand, the sin or the consequence of that is that public trust in your audience will be divided, and the public trust in you will begin to go down. You become partisan. So how can you be an interpreter and not be partisan? So in order to avoid being partisan, so that we can serve the society as a whole, then we believe that it is in the best interest of journalists to report when they want to report and opinionize when they want to opinionize. By the way, you know that it is not only journalists that can make opinions. It's not only journalists, it's not their monopoly. There are more powerful writers who are not journalists. But they write, they have limited columns in newspapers. You don't call them journalists. You have a university professor who has flair for writing, and he writes all the time. You don't call him a journalist. He has his column where he makes his opinion, expert opinion, no. And he analyzes issues and order. But then, a journalist is also a citizen. A journalist is a citizen. So nothing stops you from writing your own opinion. But what I'm saying is that when you are writing your opinion, make it known that you are writing opinion. Don't disguise it as fact. But when you now write, you bring facts and mix it with opinion and give your own idea. You are secretly camouflaging your opinion as fact. And we may mislead the people. And that's why journalists are accused of bias. And as long as we continue to wear this toga of bias or go with this impression of bias, then our profession is in jeopardy. Because I would not like to buy a paper written by edited by a biased editor. If I know you are biased, I don't need to read your paper unless I'm interested in unless I am interested in what you're doing. Although I think that is the situation in the US here. You do what I call targeting journalism. Targeting journalism in the sense that you don't write for everybody. You write for a target group, for a market. Because everything is market here. You define a market and you supply that market with information. That's commodification of news. We are commodifying it. And I don't know whether journalism today in the US is still having the kind of respect and reputation it had in the 1970s and 1960s. I'm not aware, because you are not talking now as a nation, you are simply talking as a community, small groups and other. All the newspapers in Nigeria are national. They circulate nationally. Although, don't ask me the size of circulation. But any small newspaper in Nigeria claims some circulate 200 copies, some 300 copies. The highest circulated paper in Nigeria is 34,000. But I know. When I was going through this, I saw that some papers here circulate, 2 million. 2 million copies a day and all that. So you cannot. But then I also went into another this thing to say which one is better? Is it ours that is not sponsored by corporatism, or the one that circulates well but is under corporate hold, which is better? But meanwhile, you are already saying you don't want corporate organizations to hold the media because they are, actually reducing their freedom and of course narrowing down diversity. This thing you are saying all that, or you are leaders, your intellectual leaders are saying so. So that's the case. I don't know, maybe we have to make that choice. But getting back to your question, I believe that there is need for interpretation. And that's why in newspapers you have news and you have features. News and news features. So, and in Nigeria you have separate pages for news. You have news pages, then you have features pages, then you have opinion pages. So that whoever is reading will, by the time you move from the news pages to features pages or opinion pages, you know that you are in a different area. So whatever you see there, you take. You know it's an opinion, and it's that area is not limited to only journalists. Any person who has a flair or who has something to say can write or publish. Although you will edit as a journalist, but the byline goes to you. Yeah. You have a contrary opinion? Okay.
No. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have because you were talking about Stuart Hall, who I studied in graduate school, and I can recall when Stuart Hall started getting very popular in mass communication research back in the 80s, the 1980s. And one of the reasons why he became popular was because he attacked the standard scientific model of factuality. You know, he attacked it. He said there is no such thing as absolute truth. And when journalists say they are printing all the facts there is to print, they can't possibly do this because nobody can be purely objective. You always have, you're always coming from some ideological perspective. You're always coming from some perspective of your own. So you're always interpreting. And so a small thing is like saying that, well, this fact is important. And you say, well, why is it important enough for you to write about? And Stuart Hall would say, well, that's reflecting your ideological perspective. So there have been a lot of debates that have been going on for the last 30 years around Stuart Hall's theories because, among other things, he was a neo-Marxist, and of course American scholars took one look at this. You're a neo-Marxist, we're not going to read you. And an ideology, we don't all have an ideology, only some people have ideologies. So you have the mass comm empirical scientists who say that the only kind of research that can be done would be done by experimentation or by surveys, and you would respect, you know, things like absolute truth and things like that. And then you have the other camp, which are the interpretational type, your reflection theory, or the theory that the media simply mirror reality. That would be the side of the scientists, all right? And then the other side, which is the side of the constructionists, right, would be the side that everybody interprets. You just interpret in terms of why is this issue important? Why are these facts important? Why am I including these facts in there? And so then you get into these really kind of scary kind of ideas as to whether or not anything is really a fact or not. And Stuart Hall would basically say that there are no facts. He would say that everything is constructed. All right, everything is constructed, and then the journalists seem to be holding on, like you have, held on to the idea that you can separate fact from opinion, and Stuart Hall would say that's impossible. You always have some perspective that you're coming from, and I find that to be a fascinating, just dilemma, because my husband, who's a scientist, whom I talk to, all right, criticizes Stuart Hall and everybody like him, because he says, of course there are facts. Science deals with facts, we deal with of course there's truth, it's just relative, you know. And he, it's like there's no talking to him about what Stuart Hall's talking about. I mean, there's no way to bridge that gap. He says he's just completely wrong, and there's no such thing as everything reflecting your perspective. He says that's not true. You can't have science if you don't have facts. And that's what my husband would say, because he's a scientist, you know. So I just thought I'd throw that into maybe if we could talk about whether there are really facts or not. Are there really facts?
Well, I think I personally, as a journalist, think that's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
What does objectivity mean? And we've discussed real quickly, but because I'd like to hear from Dr. Odosi on this.
Yeah, I'm not talking of, so like I said, you know, if go the way Stuart and other scientists are, are taking it. I tell you that this world we live in is a relative world. Otherwise, there would have been no need coming to university. Your forefathers went to university, your fathers went to university, you went to university, your children will go to university. What did they come there to learn? Are they recycling what you have learned before? There are new knowledge keeps emerging. New ideas keep emerging. Before, the world, the biblical world was, thought that the world was flat. And if you begin to walk and walk and walk, you get to a point where you fall off to the abyss. We believe that. And because of that, people were very cautious traveling too far so that you don't fall out of the world. But what happened? When Galileo came and said, no, the world is round. For saying so, he was excommunicated from the Catholic faith. He was excommunicated for heresy. When he said, look, there are other worlds. This is not the only world. So what I'm trying to say is that medicine of 100 years ago, 50 years ago, is not the medicine they're practicing today. Why? Because there are new discoveries. Are we now going to call those people who practiced 50 years ago liars? Were they liars? They were not liars. That was what they knew. It is the word. You cannot talk about the word you don't know. You talk about the word you know. That is factuality. But in terms of objectivity, we are talking about that. No, when we talk about objectivity, I think what we mean is factuality. Factuality, that we have the facts. For example, if I say that the Republican, or the Tea Party also are having their debate in Atlanta, and you can go to Atlanta to find out whether it's true or not. It's a fact, independent of me, whether I say it or not, independent of the person who said it. But it is a fact. But if I say that the Democrats are going to win, the Democratic government is better than, government by Democrats is better than government by Republicans, that's my opinion. And I have to argue and argue and argue and argue and argue and argue. So if I'm able to persuade you, you follow me. But the fact that there is a place called Washington, D.C. in U.S., is it a fact or opinion? It's a fact. Irrespective of me. Whether I exist, I asserted the fact. So I can be accurate or inaccurate. But the fact that there is a place called Washington, D.C. is a fact. So if in my report, I make a report that there is a place called Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, it's incontrovertible. But it is also possible that in the next 2 years, they will change the name to Obama City. And if you change the name to Obama City, it takes that name again. So if I'm going to report in 50 years' time, I will call it Obama City, no longer Washington, D.C. That's what I mean by facts. Also, there are so many beliefs. Science cannot do without belief. Science deals with assumptions also. You cannot go into experimentation without assumptions. And some of these assumptions have been found to be wrong. That was why Stuart Hall, if you look at his transcript, the transcript of his lectures, because that's the document I have, the transcript of his lectures, he has it, media representation, the old view, media representation, the new view. So he said that there was confusion in terms of media representation. That we were not separating the fact that there are events, there are occurrences that take place which a journalist can reflect, a journalist can report. But when you now begin to talk about the meaning of what happened, you are in another region entirely. So in terms of the meaning of what happened, that is where journalists are being accused of not being objective. And if that is the case, there is no objectivity anywhere. Your objectivity depends on where you are standing. And of course, someone was telling me that he's he read biochemistry, he's a biochemistry graduate. So I was telling him, I think the mother said, okay, where is the east? He wanted to identify the four cardinal geographical points. So okay, where is the east? So I said this is the east because this is the sun. My son said no. He said the east depends on where you are standing. I was a bit shocked because my mind didn't go there. And of course, where's my right depends on where I'm standing. If I ask you now, where's your right? Your right is this side. But if you come to where I am now, your right will go to this side. So that's it. So what I'm trying to say is that controversy, journalists cause that problem by themselves. They are claiming to be objective. So people in other areas are taking them up. How objective are you? But when a journalist says, I am factual, what I have reported is a fact, is truth. Scientific truth, not moral truth. Then, of course, it becomes incontrovertible. You can either verify it to be accurate or inaccurate reflection. Then when it is inaccurate, all you can do now is to make correction. That's why in journalism we have what is called retraction. Retraction. To retract, you can retract a story. Wrongly carried. At times you use somebody's name wrongly, you can retract and apologize. And all that. So because there's room for error. But journalism as a whole frowns against dishonesty. Dishonesty is a different error. It's a different form of mistake from error. Error is for me to see and see wrongly. And I reported what I see. But it becomes dishonest when I am not reporting what I'm seeing. I am seeing one thing, I'm reporting another. I am dishonest. And that is what we frown at. It's against the ethics of journalism to report falsehood. So, what I'm trying to say is that Stuart Hall has solved that problem for us by separating that there is reflective theory of truth and there's constructive theory of truth, representation of truth. So, maybe when you get back, you discuss with the scientist, tell him that there is reflective theory of truth and there is constructive theory of truth. So which one? And then maybe you have to look at that transcript again and see whether what they have there.
No, I mean the controversy's been going on for years.
Yes. Now who must rest it?
It's not just Stuart Hall. I mean, it's a whole range of scholars who are basically saying there is no absolute truth, and that you can't even talk about objectivity anymore because objectivity doesn't exist. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to add, I have a comment and then a question for you, Dr. Odosi. The comment is on this line: the facts exist, but because our language systems, our symbol systems are constructed, are biased, and anytime we try to express those facts, we are naturally adding bias to our interpretations. Right. The question I have for Dr. Odosi is this. My problem with most academic research is that it very rarely attempts to reach society beyond the ivory tower of academia. It very rarely attempts to change the world, help the world in some way. And the most difficult question for academics is to answer that so what question. Okay, you've done all this research, you've collected all this data, so what? And so I'm going to pose that to you, and it's something to consider as you're working through your research is, to what end? So what that you found this information about journalists or occupational attitudes towards journalism between Nigeria and US? So what? So what's the next step? How is this going to help society? How is this going to help journalists? Maybe you can address that.
Thank you very much. That was why I began by giving you a background to say that there's a lot of identity or cultural similarity between the United States and Nigeria. Now, if I succeed in this research to find, because now I'm leaving my mind open, I may find similarities, I may find differences. Whatever I find will be very, very useful to Nigeria and to the United States and to you and to me, particularly our mass communication department. The first reason is that we are thinking of collaboration. If your department, you are training media practitioners to practice, and I have to send my students from Nigeria to your department to be trained, I must know what you are doing different from what we are doing, or whether they are the same. That's number one. So it will help academic collaboration. And it will become easier for us to co-author books and do research together. I mean the faculty now. Then, for practitioners, if through this research I find that there is no connection whatsoever, I say if, there's no connection whatsoever between journalistic attitude and worldview in United States compared to Nigeria, then it does not make any sense. I begin to question, why do we send journalists to be trained in US? Why do we send Nigerian journalists to be trained in US? Why do we use your style sheets? Then we will stop making references to US because we are not the same. But if I'm able to establish a lot of identity or areas of similarities between media education and media professionalism between these two countries, then of course we can even send our students, when you are sending your students to Nigeria to go and take some courses there, you know that they're in the right hand, they are safe hands, because there's so much similarities. So I think this is what we gain. As one of the things, you know, of course, I think this is the purpose of Fulbright anyway. You know, your state government, the American government is spending so much money bringing people from other parts of the world to come and experience US and work with them. It is to explore. It is a diplomatic, subtlety. It is a strategy to rediscover these countries and areas of possible cooperation. So, like I told you, the book written, 21 countries surveyed, Nigeria is on them. And I felt bad because Nigeria started journalism since 1859. 1859. And although we had our first faculty of journalism in 1960, but we are older than many other even Britain had its first professor of mass communication or journalism in 1960. So Nigeria is old enough to be involved in world service. But there was nobody. Now that I've come here, I've discovered it. If I didn't come here, I would not know. So it becomes an advantage. So we're exploring areas of collaboration. Thanks, sir. Yeah.
I had a question about something that you said earlier as far as journalism. You said that dishonesty is frowned upon in journalism, but there's a difference between error and dishonesty. And when I try to check out the news and stuff like that, I'll check out something in an American newspaper, then I'll try to find the same event, like if it's world news, I'll try to find the same event in another nation's newspaper and translate, like have a little translator thing and try to figure out, the best of both worlds, because I feel that, sometimes different perspectives would tell different stories. So could you shed some light on, is that technically being dishonest? Because I feel that every nation would have their own bias to an approach of a news story. Like the war overseas, if I check out a newspaper for Iran with an event that happened there, and then you look at an American newspaper, they may say the same story but have two different, headline type of vibes, to a different mood, different tone.
Yeah. So that's why I was, maybe before you came and all that, I made mention of trying to separate opinion from fact. And there's a difference between a straitjacket news reporting and an interpreted news. That's why in journalism we have features and we have news. Now, at times you have what's called news features, or featurized news. That is news that's opinionated. And you see, in a good writer will be able to hide his feelings A good writer will be able to, if I write a story for you, hardly can you know where I stand on that story. Because I'm going to make less use of adjectives. I'm going to make use of adverbs and all sorts of qualifiers. These are the things that betray the journalists. And we got infected by English department, by English. I've always had English accountable for all this. English is, so obsessed with, imaginative expressions. They are poetic in their expressions. So it sounds nice. It sounds interesting and attractive and entertaining. But the meaning is lost. In most cases, it renders your story ambiguous. So a good story that is well edited should not have more than one meaning. A good story that is well written should have only one meaning. It's an ideal, even if we have not been able to achieve it. But we can aspire to it. So if I say that yesterday night, two vehicles had head-on collision at Moccasin Road Junction. And the driver, who was slightly injured, was taken to the police station. Stop. What is my bias here? But I'm going to give you another story. That at Moccasin Junction today, as usual, a drunken driver drove his car both left and right and smashed into an innocent, standby and killed the person. Have I not condemned the driver? I have. I've judged. Because of my adjectives, qualifiers, and all that. So what I'm trying to say, there was a day I was telling the chair, I said, that the papers I read around here, that they are too opinionated. Then we discussed and say, okay, that I should calm down, so that I should leave my mind open, so that I can see more papers and see more papers and see more papers and all that. We in Nigeria, we accuse journalists a lot. We accuse them of so many things. So we have tried now to write stories without implicating ourselves. But here, you don't do that. You write your stories with a lot of cultural biases. And those who are like you are the ones who also targeting. In Nigeria, we don't do targeting. We don't write for a particular audience, for a particular market. But here, you write for markets, you write for niche, for audience, you write for enclaves and communities and all that. And that's why, because you must sell, you must circulate. But we don't have such needs in our place. It gives us pleasure that we are communicating. But it has its disadvantage. We are not able to fund our papers. Because, like I was telling you, the largest circulation, in fact, all the newspapers in Nigeria put together, they are over 200. But if you put all the circulation per day together, all the circulation per day is not up to 50,000. Not more than 50,000. But America is 68 million. 68 million. So even if you are making, is it 10 cents or 5 cents or 1 cent per day per paper as profit, and you publish that for 365 days, why would you not be a millionaire? You make money. But you are circulating. I'm asking now, why are you circulating? Nigerian literacy rate is over 75%. There's nobody in Nigeria who does not understand English because of multi-ethnic nature of the country. You have to have a common language, a common mode of expression. Because I don't understand what you're saying, I don't understand it. And every kilometer, every mile in Nigeria is another country. Every mile is another in this thing. So we are forced to learn. Besides, our British brought-up we are not business inclined. It is civil service work, and you must be educated for you to do that. So we have enough. But ask me, even me, a media scholar, I don't read papers in Nigeria. I don't read papers. One, it's expensive. Two, they write the same thing. So once you have seen one paper, you have seen the rest. Once you listen to radio news in the morning, there's no need buying paper because is one problem we have there. So I think, my brother, that what we can do, we have to work to reduce biases, because it is disadvantageous to us. It's declining, is whittling down our public trust. Why people don't read papers in Nigeria is that we believe that some of them that they are partisan. They are representing somebody's interest. This. So if that interest is not my interest, why should I read it? Tell me the story and let me make up my mind. In fact, the newspaper, the legendary newspaper in Nigeria was called the West African Pilot. The West African Pilot, established by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe in 1936. He established that paper. You know the motto? The motto is, hold up the lamp and let the people find their way. Hold up the lamp and let the people find their way. Inform the people, inform them. They are not doubts. They know how to take decisions. Let them have their, but the other side is that no, you have to explain to the people, you have to save them, you are their savior, you are their mouthpiece, you are their everything. You are biasing. You are biasing the public. And they know it. And nobody, or not everybody is going to be happy with you. We have lawyers, you know. So if you have any case or any need for interpretation, go to them. Let us give you the facts. But that is not the subject of my research. The subject of my research is to find out who belongs to where. Journalists in the United States of America, are they interpreters? Or they are just, information disseminators? Do they just give information, or the opinioniers? Are they opinion leaders? Are they watchdogs, or they're the fourth estate? What are they? I want to find out, so that I can also compare with what Nigerians say they are. Not somebody speaking for them now, let them speak for themselves. By the time I compare the two, I'll be able to tell you whether there's area of cooperation between us or that we should go our separate ways. Yeah, you want to...
Well, I just wanted to make an announcement. I think the original time frame for this was an hour, 30 minutes presentation, 30 minutes questions and answers, but I'm sure you'll be happy to stay after if a few people have some questions. I'd like to have another presentation in the spring. Maybe by then we'll be able to see some of the results of this research.
Yes.
That'd be great towards the end of the spring. But I do want to thank Dr. Odosi and everybody for attending and look forward to another presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So what do we say now?
So probably sometime in March or April.
Yes.
We'll
Now I hope
schedule
I hope we'll be able to raise the funds to be able to get that done. You know, we need a lot of money to get that to get that done. For me, yes.
You said